Hello and good day everyone. My name is Darlena Birch, MBA, RDN, and most importantly, public health dietitian. Welcome to my YouTube channel where I discuss U.S. federal nutrition programs, the important role they play in ensuring the health and well-being of all Americans, and how public health dietitians work tirelessly to support these amazing programs. All views expressed on this channel are my own and do not represent the opinions of any entity whatsoever with which I have been, am now, or will be affiliated. For today's video, I'm going to talk about the differences between the enrichment and fortification of food. This is probably a term you're semi-familiar with. You've probably seen on food packaging when it says like enriched with, I don't know, vitamin A, or fortified with iron. For some, this term may sound new, but I suspect that for many, you've actually been hearing these terms or reading them on the food packages for some time, even if you don't entirely understand what it means. Therefore, I want to talk about these terms in detail so that you as the consumer can be better educated as to what it means when you see these things on your food packages. The terms fortified and enriched are defined by the U.S. Food and Drug Administration. Specific to fortification, fortification means adding nutrients to foods that prevent the onset of a particular nutrient deficiency within the general population. Ultimately, fortification means adding nutrients that aren't naturally existing in the food to prevent the onset of a particular nutrient deficiency within the general population. Fortification has been one of the most successful public health interventions in U.S. history and has virtually eliminated diseases. One successful example of this is the fortification of salt with iodine, which was done to prevent goiter, which is caused by insufficient iodine intake. Beriberi, pellagra, and rickets are also diseases that result from nutrient deficiencies. Thankfully, these conditions have almost entirely disappeared thanks to the fortification of other foods with thiamine, niacin, and vitamin D. That's right, did you know that vitamin D helps the body absorb calcium? This is why milk is fortified with vitamin D. It's not that milk actually has vitamin D naturally occurring in it, but we know that it helps the body absorb calcium. So milk is fortified with vitamin D to help with calcium absorption. As a result, the incidence of rickets, which is caused by vitamin D deficiency, has nearly disappeared. Now, I do want to clarify that the terms fortification versus enrichment can be used interchangeably, and they occasionally are. However, they do technically mean two separate things. Whereas fortification refers to the addition of nutrients that aren't naturally occurring in a food to help prevent nutrient deficiencies, enrichment refers to the addition of nutrients that were existing in the food but were depleted during processing, so now they've been added back into the food. In other words, fortification refers to foods that have had nutrients added to them that are not naturally occurring in the food itself, such as iodine in salt or vitamin D to milk. But enrichment refers to the addition of nutrients back into food that was lost during processing. However, it's important to note that foods that have nutrients added to them are also sometimes called enriched foods, hence why they are occasionally used interchangeably. One well-known example of enriched food is refined wheat flour, also known as white flour. Enriched flour must contain specific amounts of the B vitamins thiamine, riboflavin, niacin, and folic acid, as well as iron. These nutrients were lost during the processing of the wheat, and therefore they've been added back to the final product to restore its nutrition. Just as iodine is added to salt to prevent goiter, these B vitamins and iron are added to refined flour to prevent health problems associated with low intake of certain nutrients. Now, several types of flours and breakfast cereals have been fortified with folic acid since 1998 because sufficient folic acid consumption by pregnant women actually helps prevent birth defects in the fetus known as neural tube defects. In fact, the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention reports that ever since folic acid fortification began in 1998, about 1,300 babies are born each year without an NTD who might otherwise have been affected. Therefore, folic acid fortification is an important way to prevent NTDs. Now, unlike fortified foods, many enriched foods have specific amounts of certain vitamins added to them to meet the official FDA definitions. Examples of other foods on the market that are commonly fortified or enriched include corn masa flour. In 2018, the FDA approved the enrichment of corn masa flour used to make tortillas, tamales, and corn chips with folic acid as well. Milk. Vitamins A and D are often added to milk, which is important since vitamin D tends to be underconsumed by Americans. Plant-based milks. Both soy and almond milk can be fortified with calcium and vitamin D. Fruit juice. Some fruit juices are fortified with vitamin D and calcium. White rice. Like white flour, enriched white rice has thiamine, niacin, folic acid, and iron added. This means that when you rinse your rice before cooking, you're actually removing these extra nutrients. Breakfast cereals. Many breakfast cereals are fortified and can help increase intake of important micronutrients like the B vitamins, vitamins A, C, D, and E, calcium, iron, magnesium, and zinc. So now that I've defined what fortification means versus enrichment and provided examples of each of these within the U.S. food supply, I want to give a brief history about how these things came into existence. I just think it's very important to understand why these foods were first enriched/fortified into the food supply in the first place. In the United States, as in most parts of the world, fortification of food was initiated as a systematic approach to correct identified nutrient deficiencies within its population. In 1924, iodine was first added to salt on a voluntary voluntary basis in an attempt to address the prevalent health problem of goiter in the US. This program was only begun after a number of prominent national health organizations of the time, including the American Public Health Association, the Council on Foods and Nutrition of the American Medical Association, and the Committee of Food and Nutrition of the National Academies of Sciences, recommended this step based on new research demonstrating that sodium iodide prevented goiter. This initial fortification effort was followed in 1933 by the fortification of milk with vitamin D based on recommendations from similar groups. In the 1930s and 1940s, specific deficiency disease syndromes were first identified and documented in the US, and based on this new science, in 1940, the Committee on Food and Nutrition, which is now known as the Food and Nutrition Board, recommended the addition of thiamine, niacin, riboflavin, and iron to flour. In 1941, this was expanded to incorporate bread as well. Now, I could talk about the history of fortification and enrichment forever, but now I want to pivot a little bit away from the high-level overview of the history of enrichment and fortification programs in the US and just talk about why enrichment and fortification is so important. The fact remains that the enrichment and fortifications of foods in the US food supply has been a major public health success. These processes can be used to correct and prevent widespread nutrient intake shortfalls and associated deficiencies, to balance the total nutrient profile of a diet, to restore nutrients lost in processing, and to appeal to consumers looking to supplement their diet. Food fortification can even be considered as a public health strategy to enhance nutrient intakes of a population. Over the past century, fortification has been effective at reducing the risk of nutrient deficiency diseases such as beriberi, goiter, pellagra, and rickets. However, it's important to note that the world is very different from when fortification first emerged in the 1920s. Although early fortification programs were designed to eliminate deficiency diseases, current fortification programs are based on low dietary intakes rather than a diagnosable condition. Therefore, diligence should ensue when using an approach to achieve effective and responsible fortification practices and policies, including responsible marketing of fortified products. Food manufacturers have, after all, perfected the art of misleading labeling to trick the consumer into thinking a certain food item is healthier than it actually is. As a result, although fortification and enrichment has been very important in improving the health of the public, it should also be applied prudently, its effects monitored diligently, and the public informed effectively about its benefits through consumer education efforts. Hence the purpose of my video today. Stay tuned as I plan on posting another video that dives deeper into fortification and enrichment of foods in the US food supply from the angle of misleading manufacturer practices. Thank you for joining me today. If you like what you see, please smash the like button and subscribe to my YouTube channel. And remember, you're your own best advocate. Feed your body well, nourish your soul, nurture your mind, and nutrify your spirit. Remain true to yourself and never forget that every second forward is another opportunity to be a better version of your past self. Bye.